Welcome to Augustana Lutheran Church in Denver, Colorado. It is the long-standing tradition of Augustana to hold a concert every December filled with music for the season. Unfortunately, as we all know, this year due to the pandemic, that is not possible. So in its place, we present to you this humble offering. And it is my hope that this musical offering may be a fitting source of praise to Almighty God, but that it may also be of comfort and joy to all who listen to this performance from their homes. Music, as it regularly happens here at Augustana, of course, has been curtailed by the pandemic. But I have had the joy of working with AVE, Augustana Vocal Ensemble, our wonderful staff singer quartet, and members of the Augustana Ringers, Handbells, to provide music for worship services, but also for this small concert. I invite you all to sit back and enjoy this music for Christmas from Augustana Lutheran Church. That rollicking piece that I just played is a fanfare on Hark the Herald Angels Sing. It was arranged by Alec Whiten. Alec Whiten was born in England but spent most of his career in the United States as the organist choir master of the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City. You no doubt heard our rather loud festival trumpet stop that is on the back wall of this church. Alec Whiten at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine had a much larger trumpet stop on the Aeolian Skinner organ, and this piece was no doubt conceived for that stop. The Cathedral of St. John the Divine is the largest Gothic cathedral in the world, and that trumpet stop is nearly 2 blocks away from the main organ up front in the chancel. The next piece that we will offer is a lovely setting of In the Bleak Midwinter, originally arranged by Joseph Jenkins. It was recorded by the choir Chanticleer, and our very own Blake Nawa has arranged it for AVE to sing. And this is because the original arrangement that Chanticleer sang is 8 parts, and obviously we only have 4 singers with AVE. So his arrangement brings this lovely setting of the carol that was originally written by Gustav Holst in 1906. Following that, I will play a wonderful, lush arrangement of the tune Greensleeves. We always associate this at holiday time with the carol, What Child Is This? And this was arranged by Richard Purvis. Richard Purvis was organist for another large Episcopal cathedral, this time on the West Coast, Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. This piece is one of the best pieces of music to show how the organ orchestrates, and we get to hear lots of different colors of the organ, including a few notes on the chimes at the very end. As we all know, during this pandemic, most ensemble music making has been curtailed just because it is not safe to be together. This is especially true for choral singing. And as you have all seen, we have kept choral singing to the small numbers to our wonderful AVE quartet. One form of music making that seems to be a bit safer than singing is ringing handbells. And I am happy that for the past several months, I have had the joy of working with 8 ringers from our Augustana Ringers to provide music for our worship services and a piece for this concert. I applaud their courage and their commitment to making music like this at this time. One of the differences that we've made here is that we no longer share bells between ringers, and every ringer has their own table. So the ensemble is a little bit more spread out than they're used to. But everyone who's been playing has adapted to this wonderfully, and it's been a great joy to make music with this ensemble. So here now is a wonderful setting of the famous French carol, Angels We Have Heard on High, by Linda Lamb. That lovely little setting of Silent Night that I just played for you is a setting by American composer Philip Krekel, who was active in the late 1800s and early 1900s. His family was of German lineage, even though he was born here in the United States, and he lived and worked in Rochester, New York. However, he was able to go back to Germany to study with the famous organist Max Reger. And while Krekel's compositions are significantly more simple than those of Max Reger, you still hear that deep, rich, late 19th century influence in his writing. And he wrote many simple little pieces like this, many based on Gregorian chant for use in Catholic churches. But this lovely setting of Silent Night is, of course, connected to his German heritage. But if you all notice, the rhythm of the tune was a little bit different than maybe what we're used to singing. And sometimes the German language version of Silent Night has those extra dotted rhythms in it. And so it's interesting to hear the differences in that. Next on our program, we go back quite a long ways, 500 some years, to Renaissance music. The famous Spanish composer Tomás Luis de Victoria, who wrote this wonderful motet, O Magnum Mysterium. The translation for this text roughly goes like this: O great mystery and wonderful sacrament, that the animals should see the Lord lying in a manger. This text comes from the service of matins, or morning prayer, for Christmas Day in the morning. And it's this lovely little antiphon that would have been sung prior to a psalm being sung, and one of Victoria's most famous pieces. And AVE presents it here with a lovely, the lovely tone that they always give us for this lovely Renaissance music, which they really enjoy playing, by the way. After that, we move ahead a couple hundred years to Baroque era France, to a French Noël, Noël Étranger, by Louise-Claude Daquin. Daquin and his family were very closely tied to the French royal family. And as a child, Daquin had the honor of playing for King Louis XIV, and later on in adulthood worked in the court of Louis XV. And ultimately, Daquin ended up becoming the principal organist of the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris. All of the organists of this time wrote simple, joyous little noëls, as they were called, these little pieces based on famous Christmas tunes. And they are very simple and straightforward, and nothing complex about them, or especially high art. They were intended as crowd pleasers. Before we hear this piece, we hear O Magnum Mysterium by Victoria. One of the most famous Christmas carols is Lowhara Rose. It is just over 400 years old, written by the German composer Michael Praetorius. Michael Praetorius was the son of a Lutheran minister, and Praetorius was one of the very earliest composers to develop genres of music based on Lutheran chorales. That would become such a common practice in the Baroque era, such as chorale preludes and cantatas based on hymns and chorales of the Lutheran Church. This piece is one of his original compositions, and AVE presents it here in English, but in otherwise its original harmonization and its original form. Following this setting, we have a different setting of Lowhara Rose by the well-known 19th century German composer Johannes Brahms. This piece is from a set of chorale preludes that Brahms wrote at the very end of his life, and these pieces were not published until after Brahms' death. Brahms had written some music for the organ earlier in his life, but that went away when he began writing fabulous music for the piano and fabulous orchestral music and choral music, such as his German Requiem. But near the end of his life, he felt the need to come back to the organ. And so he wrote 11 chorale preludes at the end of his life. And this lovely setting of Lowhara Rose is a part of that. As you will hear, it's significantly different from the Praetorius version of it, where we have all this wonderful late 19th century harmony that goes along with it that Brahms was known for, but was very common of composers of the time, including Richard Wagner. So in this particular setting, the melody of Lowhara Rose is rather difficult to hear, but it's there, trust me, in a lovely setting of this for the organ. So enjoy now two settings of Lowhara Rose.
It came of
We have enjoyed being able to provide this music of the season for you this evening. We have one more piece before we go, and this is What Sweeter Music by English composer John Rutter. John Rutter has made it a mission in his life to promote the Christmas carol and add many of his own Christmas carols to the repertoire, of which he has written dozens at this point. It is one of his favorite genres, and he loves contributing to it. As you Augustana folks know, John Rutter is also a significant composer of other choral music, such as his Gloria and his Requiem. This is a lovely little setting of the text, What Sweeter Music. This was commissioned by King's College, Cambridge, for their famous annual service of lessons and carols that happens every Christmas Eve. Every year they commission a new carol for the service, and this was one of those carols written about 30 years ago. And it's just a lovely setting and one of Rutter's famous settings. A little odd factoid about this carol is that its orchestral recording that John Rutter made with the Cambridge Singers ended up in a Volvo commercial in the 1990s. I don't know if any of you remember that, but I certainly remember that as a young child having started studying music. I remember seeing that commercial and seeing this lovely piece in there, which I'd recognized from my work in church music. So I wish all of you a healthy and safe season this Christmas tide. And thank you so much for joining us for these carols from Augustana Lutheran Church.
Was